The first day of pads were in the books for the Pittsburgh Steelers at their training camp. There was hitting, there was some missing, and there were some big things to be seen about certain players. We'll talk about the biggest winners from their first day in pads, backs on backers, all the big hitting drills. We'll also talk about Kenny Pickett moving up. Maybe? Just hear me out. I got some things about that. We'll also talk about Deshaun Watson. His suspension recommendation has come out from the NFL. We'll talk about that all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Before we get started here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. I did say we're bringing in Wes, but we had a breaking news update happen shortly after we recorded, and that was that the Chris Boswell has been extended by the Pittsburgh Steelers, a 4-year extension worth $20 million, $12.5 million guaranteed, reported by Adam Schefter of ESPN. I talk more about this in the full video that you can watch. Click on the tag here that we put here to go watch it for my full breakdown of it. But I didn't want to interrupt the entire episode because we were talking about training camp and everything there, but it's such a crucial deal. Chris Boswell, as I've talked about on the show, is on a Hall of Fame trajectory for what he's doing with the kicking game in the NFL, and you're locking him up for 4 more years. That'll put him over the 10-year mark of his career. You'll see where he's at then. And if he's still kicking at that level, you'll probably pay him to stay at that level and make the kicking game not a question. So smart move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We won't spend too much time on it here. Again, click on the video that we linked earlier just about just going over all the details of the deal and the details of why I think this was so crucial and how Chris Boswell earned this kind of money to tie Justin Tucker for being the highest paid kicker in NFL history. Without further ado, let's get right to me and Wes chopping up what happened with the first day of pads in training camp. And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're enjoying this show, like the video. If you're seeing it on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our breaking news content. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. As you can see, we have my friend Wes here. Before we get to Wes, I got to do a shout out that I did promise to some strong Steelers fans that I met out at Steelers training camp, some young men from the Community Empowerment Association. I want to give a shout out to my guys, David, Jaden, L, Jeremy, Jeremiah, Nasir, Darnell, and Marquise. It was great meeting all of you. You all seemed like exciting young dudes. I'm excited to see what you guys do with yourselves. Some of y'all playing football. I hope to be reading some of your high school highlights on WPXI Channel 11 Skylights someday. So it was great to meet all of you guys, and just wanted to give you guys a quick shout out on the show. But now back to the show. Wes, what's up, man? How you doing?
Chris Carter, man of the people. I'm doing fantastic. I have met a couple people at training camp as well, too, who have said, I love SNR. I love listening to you and Carter on Locked On. So, yeah, feeling the love with training camp, baby.
Absolutely. Well, there was not a whole lot of love when the pads go on because, well, I guess it's tough love, if you want to call it that, Wes. But Backs on Backers was here. There was lots of hitting. There's all that we get to see these guys go full live, no questions being asked about, is someone slowing down because there's no pads on. All that went out the window. And from the physicality standpoint, we love to see backs on backers. We get to see the running backs and the linebackers and the defensive ends and the tight ends and all the edge rushers. All those guys go at it. The guy that seems to be the clearest winner when you talk to everyone across the board, consensus-wise, is Myles Jack, who was lighting people up. They said he blew up Derek Watt. You got to see him make some plays here and there. I already talked about Myles Jack just on yesterday's episode about the plays he's making in coverage. He's showing some really good things. Physicality. This guy could be the linebacker they signed him to be.
Yeah, all indicators early on very solid for Myles Jack. And Chris, yeah, especially in backs on backers. I was sharing this with you a little bit earlier. Like Mike Tomlin during backs on backers, and you know how he is, anybody who's been out to camp, Mike Tomlin loves it when that's going on. He paces the sideline. He gets very into it. He'll want to see 2 guys rep it out again if he saw something he didn't like, or maybe one guy dominated the other guy. Hey, hold on now. Let's show some pride here. Let's run that back again. He's always very animated. One thing he kept saying was, don't warm up to it. Don't warm up. This is tackle football. Don't warm up to it. Meaning, I don't think he was really entirely pleased with the intensity during backs on backers and maybe the early portions of, contact in the first practice with pads on. Well, that being said, Myles Jack, I think, was an exception to that as well, too. It's important to note TJ Watt didn't work in the drill. Alex Highsmith, I think, had 2 or 3 reps, so barely any work for him. But Myles Jack, in a way, kind of looked like he didn't belong out there. And I mean that in a good way. Like, he looked like a man amongst boys in the drill. I thought he was a clear winner of the day. Man, poor Anthony McFarland and Benny Snell just got toasted by him a couple times. So he looked solid. He looked the part. You love to see it, absolutely. I thought Buddy Johnson had a pretty solid backs on backers and had a couple really nice moves out there as well, too. Robert Spillane well, too.
Mark Robinson,
Mark
the rookie
Robinson.
out of Ole Miss.
Chris, I would say, honestly, all of the off-ball linebackers, I thought, except for Devin Bush, were big winners in backs on backs. Devin Bush, not so much. He got swallowed up by Benny. He got swallowed up by Najee. He did not look great. Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a second here, because we've talked about how this whole linebacker crew is going to be Myles Jack, Devin Bush, and then Robert Spillane and Buddy Johnson and whoever else fills in there. And hey, backs on backers isn't everything. It's it's a drill. It's you going after seeing if you can beat the running back in the hole when you're being a pass rusher, and that's not what they signed up Devin Bush to be. He's more he's to help be fast, be the one-on-one guy. But Brian Flores was seen taking Devin Bush to the side and being like, "Hey, let's work on this." And again, it was the first day in pads, so I want to keep emphasizing these are the early stages of training camp, but it does draw an interesting question, how much of this early part of training camp are we able to kind of rely upon to see, like, hey, is Myles Jack going to be that guy? Is he going to be kind of the leader of the linebackers? He's older than Devin Bush. I mean, technically he should be, but I know the Steelers were really hoping that Devin Bush would return to form, and this is not to say that he won't or anything like that, but I guess, do you feel like there's a legitimate crisis coming with the Pittsburgh Steelers needing to see more from Devin Bush right away? Or is this still like hey, there's about 4 or 5 more weeks of this training camp stuff and then they play actual football? Let's wait to see that.
Maybe a balance of both, right?
Okay.
Wasn't thrilled with what I saw from Devin Bush today, but it is also August 1st. Right. They don't even play their first preseason. The practice was August 1st. Today is August 2nd. You get what I'm saying. It was August 1st, the observations that we're talking about. They don't even play another preseason game for still 11 days. So not panicking, but Chris, you would like to see in some of these situations, hey, at least a pop from Devin Bush, right? Whether that be an athletic pop, whether it be a physicality pop, him making a splash play in team period, him having a couple really nice reps in 7-on-7s, just something that you can hang your hat on to say, all right, there it is. Right. All right, there it is. He hasn't had a ton of those yet. You and I on SNR, we talked about how last week before the pads went on, there was a time where, he had Najee Harris in the middle of the field, and Najee just completely danced around him. And I don't think even if they would have had pads on and would have been going full speed, it wouldn't have mattered. He got left flat-footed by Najee last week in practice. And then today, again, I don't want to make it seem like he was a disaster and he doesn't belong on a football field. But today, I did not think was a great day for him. There weren't many wow moments, and if they were maybe, oh wow, he just got swallowed up by Benny Snell on that rep. Not a lot to be encouraged by. I'm not sounding the alarm. Tomorrow's a new day. He could have a better practice, all those things. But I think you would like to see at some point just some indicators from Devin. Just, again, something to hang your hat on. That, all right, he's going to make some plays, and it just hasn't been there yet.
It hasn't been there yet. But again, like you said, lots of time to do that. We'll see when that comes. Last thing here on the physicality standpoint, I liked that when you look at what happened with Najee Harris when he was in backs on backers, Robert Spillane got him, kind of faked him out a little bit, sort of like went around him and Najee Harris is thinking this is Robert Spillane, the guy who beat Derrick Henry in the hole.
I think Najee was thinking Derrick Henry in the hole, and instead he got finesse Robert Spillane. He was like, oh, hold on.
Right. And so he missed it. Now, again, a reminder, backs on backers isn't the linebacker trying to tackle the running back. It's them simulating if the linebacker was coming after the quarterback, the running back's job is to stop him in the hole and protect the quarterback.
There's some jabroni like me who's standing out there pretending to be the quarterback.
Exactly. So it's not a tackle thing. It's a, can you block this guy coming? So the defender gets free reign to go, bull rush or, go finesse, go aggressive, those type of things. But I thought it was really interesting with Robert Spillane beating Najee Harris, and he drew the defense is like, oh, God, Najee, what's up with that, Najee? And Najee didn't say nothing, just kind of just gets up and is like, okay, let's go again. And the second time, then he wipes out Robert Spillane. So I like seeing that out of Najee.
That's the back and forth you like to see.
That's the back and forth you like to see. And I think that's the healthy competition we're seeing here at Steelers training camp, especially now with the pads going on.
Yeah, and you know what? A funny aside for you, too, because you already know, backs on backers, that's what I've been waiting for. I was, Kabali and I were scouring the sidelines ahead of time to figure out where the drill was going to be so we could get in the good spot for backs on backers, right? Before that first Spillane and Najee rep, Minkah Fitzpatrick was over there, and he was gassing up Robert Spillane, and he was getting in Najee's head, right? His old Alabama buddy, but he's on the other side of the field now.
Funny.
So he's getting Najee all psyched out, and he's gassing up Robert Spillane, and I think that was part of the reason why Najee was just like, all right, let's go. A little contact, Petey, like one of those moments. And Spillane gave him the slip. And then after that, Najee yells at Minkah, and he goes, hey, Minkah, get out of my head, man. All right, get out of my head. You're trying to mess with my head. And then he settles down and wins very clearly the next rep against Spillane. That's why you love training camp, and those are those good moments. That's, I'm going to sound very cliched here. I'm going to sound like Tunch and Wolf here, but those are those sharpening iron type moments that you have in training camp.
Yes, sir. I think that's exciting to talk about, but we do got to talk about Najee. There was an injury scare. It doesn't appear to be much, but I'll give you all the details on that in just a second here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, we got to talk to you guys about Built Bar. If you haven't tried the new Built Bar Puffs, you're missing out because they have the cookie dough chunk puff flavor. It is amazing. If you like cookie dough, it's that's covered in chocolate, you're gonna be in a happy place. This is that same cookie dough flavor that your mom used to make. It's light, it's chewy, it's real cookie dough chunks, and of course covered in 100% real chocolate, just like all other Built Bars are out there. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein to come with them. So if you're trying to get some gains while not putting on the junk food, this is the perfect snack for you. Run to Built.com right now and snag a box for you and the family. It'll be a perfect treat, or you can find a really good hiding space and just hoard them for yourself. Like all Built Bars, cookie dough chunk puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate, and they're healthy and tasty. And that's chocolate covered cookie dough with a light, fluffy texture that's so good. And again, all Built Bars come with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently, provides a lot more health benefits, and helps you eat something that tastes good while being good for you. Again, go to Built.com right now. Be sure to enter that promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15, LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your next order when you visit Built.com. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter. He's Wes Euler. Wes, let's quickly go over what happened with Najee Harris. Now there was a scene where, and everyone was taking pictures of it, so you can go on Twitter and everything. But there was a scene where he came up funny from a play, and he had to take his shoe and his sock off, and then he was kind of walking around without his shoe and his sock, and then he was hopping on his one foot. So everyone's scared, like, is that an ankle? Is that a list? What's going on? But eventually he did put his sock and his shoe back on after John Norwick, the head trainer, looked at him, and then Mike Tomlin afterwards just simply said his foot got stepped on. No big deal. We just shut him down afterwards because there was no need to really, test that until we figured out what it was. So a little scary there, but it does beg the question, man, if Najee goes down, like there's like a short list of players. If TJ, if Minkah, if Cam, if Najee, and I guess if I was to think of another player, it'd be tough because there's, Pat Freiermuth.
Hopefully, I was gonna say hopefully Freiermuth. Hopefully in that same conversation.
Right. Hopefully he's good enough to be in that same conversation. But he's on that list either way of players that, man, if they go down, what are the Steelers going to do? So yeah, and Cam, of course. But yeah, so looking at those guys, this was a little bit of a scare, but I think it's a reminder that, hey, it's important for Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, Jerry McNichols, who didn't practice on Monday, so that we'll keep an eye on that. It's important for these guys to show up because there might be a couple games where they're going to need them to show up.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's funny you say that. That's one of the things that Arthur Moats and I started the show, the Steelers Blitz today on SNR, talking about was, you know what, now in this physicality element, when we are, Mike Tomlin at the very beginning of 7 shots is yelling, this is tackle football to the ground, this is tackle football. Let's see a running back emerge here. We've talked a lot about the physicality of, okay, if you've liked some things you've seen from the offensive line, take it with a grain of salt till they put the pads on. We like some things we've seen from DeMarvin Leal, but all right, take it with a grain of salt until they put the pads on. I think the running backs are in that same conversation. Yeah, you want to see some of the athleticism out of the backfield pop, certainly. But to me, which one of these guys is going to be able to grind it out and play that physical style in, hopefully only short spells for Najee Harris? But what if his ankle gets rolled up on in the second quarter of the game and you need one of these guys to be the guy for a second half, right? What if, God forbid, something happens and Najee's out for 2 or 3 weeks and you need these guys to carry the load for the better part of a month, right? I don't know if we feel very confident in any of these guys yet. Snell feels like, buddy, if it's not going to happen soon, when is it going to happen? Anthony McFarland, it feels like there might be something there, but we haven't seen it consistently enough, and he hasn't been healthy enough. We know McNichols has some skill out of the backfield, particularly. They worked out Howard last week as well, too. Could they be bringing some other people in? Regardless of all this, you need someone. I think it's important. A lot of these conversations we've had about the offensive line and the quarterbacks and these different things. But what would be very important for this offense, too, is if we get to August 18th and camp is over and we're all kind of looking around and we're saying, all right, it's not D'Angelo Williams, it's not LeGarrette Blount, but I think the Steelers have a pretty solid option here at number 2 in this guy, insert name here. We just need someone to emerge in that department.
They just need someone to show up, someone to be a good second-team running back. Now, moving on, speaking of second teams,
Wes. Oh, nice transition there. Wow, do you do radio for a living or something?
Kenny Pickett ran with the second teams, baby.
Woo! That was the news that almost broke Steelers Twitter today.
Ring the alarms, Kenny Pickett, second string. No, that's not what happened. Right, hip-hop horns. But point being, Kenny Pickett did run second team all day long. It wasn't just 7 shots. Also, the defense dominated 7 shots again, 5-2. That is their third straight 5-2
dominated
win in 7 shots.
Chris, that was with Najee had a rushing touchdown on the first shot of the 7, on the first play of the 7. So they basically, after the first play, I mean, just absolutely, they were 5-1 after the first play. Just dominated them after the first play, and a lot of those reps weren't even particularly close. But sorry.
No, there's no sorry.
Great. It's not great.
That's not great. But this is also, I talked about this with Brooke, for Friday's episode, Brooke Pryor of ESPN. The defense is going to crush these guys a lot this camp. That defense is together. And I know, yes, there's new pieces like Myles Jack and, eventually Larry Ogunjobi and the corners are we're still figuring out who the corners are. But and Minka Fitzpatrick isn't even playing. But, Cam Hayward's there. TJ Watt's there. Alex Highsmith's there, and Myles Jack is a good player. Terrell Edmonds, he's been all these guys, they're familiar with this. And so the guys that are plugging and playing, they're looking around like, oh, I'll just follow these guys, or I'll just feed off of them. This is going to happen a lot. I said it then. The offense won the first day of 7 shots. They have not won since. Now, to fully recap, we have 5-2. Trubisky, threw 2 passes, neither have scored. Harris ran one in, was stopped short on another. Kenny Pickett threw 2 passes, didn't score. Mason Rudolph was in with the third team, and the running back ran it in. So I mean that was interesting to see how that played out. But I think there's an interesting thing to take away from here, because now everyone saw Kenny Pickett run on the second team. They're like, finally, this is what we've been waiting for. And I'm like, guys, they're going to be sharing these all throughout camp. The first week you saw it was pretty much the same rotation. Mitch 1, Mason 2, Kenny 3. But what did I tell all the people that were saying, oh, Kenny's a bum, he sucks, he's not playing well, he's running for his life because that third string offensive line wasn't able to do much for him. He had the least talented of the weapons to throw to and depend upon in the passing game. that is going to be part of it. And then all of a sudden today, he's with the second team, and he did a lot better.
Yeah, I don't. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. No. But I think you were answering. This is none of this right now should be determined as the gospel, the Bible, how this quarterback battle is going to end up in a month later.
Correct. Sorry to cut you off there. All I was like, it was not coincidence that Kenny Pickett looked the best that he's looked in Latrobe so far, and he was running with the twos today. There's not coincidence there. You're absolutely right. Say what you'll say about, you want a quarterback to be able to elevate. Running with the third stringers, he was running for his life out there. Today, I don't think it's a coincidence. Monday, I don't think it's a coincidence that he had his best practice at camp so far when he finally bumped up with a lot more guys who are going to be on the roster. Here's my quarterback take for you, though, Mr. Carter. And I love it. I love what the Steelers did today. I love how they flipped Mason and Kenny. And Kenny deserved that opportunity. He certainly did. You wanted to see that happen at some point, and it happens here early. And again, like you said, Mike Tomlin, this does not mean that Kenny is, past anybody on the depth chart or solidified number 2, anything like that. I'd expect at some point they'll flip again. To me, though, Chris, it's not a quarterback competition. All right, I'm Judge Euler here is hammering down the gavel.
Sir.
All right.
Sorry, this is a Wendy's.
You're the one with the law degree. This is a Wendy's. You're the one with the law degree. But Judge Euler is hammering the gavel down. If Mitch Trubisky stays with the ones and it's just Kenny and Mason who flip-flop at 2 and 3, it's not a quarterback competition. So until we see Kenny now that we've had this switch, right? Until we see Kenny or Mason run with the ones, I'm done calling it a QB competition. Judge Euler, lawyered.
Did you just say lawyer straight out of How I Met Your Mother?
Yes, I did. Marshall Erickson, how you doing?
You are so silly, sir. But I do agree. There's a point to there. Like this is, again, I've said all along, this is Mitch's job to lose right now.
It certainly is.
It certainly is. But I also would not be surprised if next week Mason's running with the ones.
I wouldn't.
If you're seeing him. Again, this is a new era of Mike Tomlin, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We have never seen him go through training camp without Ben Roethlisberger. And none of these guys are proven. Mason Rudolph is a proven backup. Mm-hmm. Kenny's a rookie. Mitch is trying to reestablish himself. So what they're going to do is they're going to test all of these guys. Ben Roethlisberger, there was no reason to ever move Ben Roethlisberger off the first team. It was the only reason he wasn't with the first team is because Ben needed some rest. That was what you did. He was your franchise quarterback established. You didn't mess with that. You do mess with when you're looking to see what everyone has. How do they respond when they don't have the best talent around? Because I think that's also a test of character, a test of study. Can you lift up the other guys around you? Like Mason looked sharp with the second team, was looking really good at times. People were saying he was the best quarterback in training camp. And I was like, yeah, but let's add some context here. One, not going up against TJ Watt, who was pick-sixing Mitch Trubisky on wide receiver screens, not going up against Cam Hayward, not going up against that entire first-team defense. He's going against the second-team defense with a better second-team offense than that third-string offense. And that third-string offense was letting Kenny Pickett get destroyed. Or not destroyed, run for his life. He wasn't getting hit. The Steelers wouldn't do that. But point being, there's a lot of context that needs to be had here, and this was why Mike Tomlin said on the Tuesday before camp even started, don't take this day to day. Don't think that this QE battle is moving up and down every day. It's not like that. It's just, hey, we're putting together information. We're seeing how guys respond. Then we'll make a decision at the end of the camp. But I agree with you. The decision is already basically been made. It's Mitch, unless he looks terrible, or Kenny or Mason run with the ones and look phenomenal.
I was going to say, unless I'm wrong and tomorrow Mason's running with the ones.
Yeah, then
no quarterback competition.
Judge Euler, you're overruled.
No QB competition for you.
Okay, stupid.
How many sitcoms can I fit into this segment?
Yeah, you're trying to fit all of them. See, I was just like, I was going for Law and Order, but you're going okay. But it's fine. We're doing great. But point being, Kenny Pickett did run with the twos. Don't make too much of it, Steelers fans. But do be excited that he did well with them. He was throwing on the run. And Kenny Pickett is doing very well in the broken play parts of things. He's getting better with the timing and the understanding of plays, but you like to see that sandbox type of play. That's what Ben used to do very well. I think it's good that you're seeing that of him. Let's keep seeing him grow each and every day in camp. We're going to take another break here. When we come back, we're going to take a step back from the Steelers at training camp and talk about the elephant in the room, which is the Deshaun Watson decision, which has been handed down by the judge. We'll give you our response to that right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Wes Euler of Steeler Nation Radio and the Ears and Beers podcast. Okay, Wes, we got to talk about this decision that came out before practice even started Monday, and it was the the judge who was assigned to look over this case, hear both sides, and make a decision on how the NFL should punish. And again, this is an ex-judge, really. It's a person who the NFL basically was like, hey, can you kind of be the person that makes this call? So it's a neutral third party. Yeah. And the decision came down to a 6-game suspension for Deshaun Watson. Huge news. Started a firestorm that we all knew eventually was coming for the AFC North. Browns fans rejoicing because they know that they're getting Deshaun Watson at some point. There's some pushback that maybe Roger Goodell will appeal and try to, and he'll say, you know what, we're just tacking on more games onto that. But Wes, I think we finally at least see the light at the end of the tunnel for this saga, so we at least know what happens. But there's a lot of people, and myself included, who feel like, man, like that was 24 plus accusations out there, and I know that they were only looking at 5 or whatever in the decision, but there's a lot of women who are fans of the NFL who I've seen are just disgusted by this and feel like, they don't take any issues that we raise seriously.
And buddy, I'm glad you went there, because that to me is what this conversation should be about.
Yeah.
And as easy as it is, I don't want to make it seem, if you're someone who's said this, if you've tweeted this, if you've whatever, I don't want to make it seem like I'm trying to call you out or anything. But the people who have said, oh, Calvin Ridley bet $1,500 on a game and now he's missing the entire season, but Deshaun Watson's doing this, right? Or, Josh Gordon or such and such smoked weed and missed time, and look at this. That, to me, I think takes away from the real issue. It really does.
Yeah,
and again,
I agree.
You're correct in pointing out that hypocrisy. But to me, that's diverting the conversation. Listen, we could talk about weed and drugs in sports if you want to have that conversation. We could talk about gambling in sports if you want to have that conversation. But this one, I don't think should be diverted off of what you just said, and that number of 24 women and the bigger picture of. I mean, it's hard sometimes to not think that a lot of these leagues don't give a rip about their women fan bases,
Yeah.
And despite all the evidence to the contrary, despite, NFL, when October rolls around 2 months from now, they're going to have all those pink games and all those crucial catches. And if you go to Heinz Field for a home game in October, you'll get a pink terrible towel when you walk in the door. To me, If I was a woman and was a fan of this game, I'm like you. I am upset, and I think it's ridiculous in a lot of different levels that we could sit here for 2 hours and address. But that's what I keep coming back to today is, people like my wife, people like your girlfriend Tiana, right?
Yes.
Women who love football. My mother-in-law is one of the biggest football fans that I know. She hasn't missed an Eagles game in decades, right? She could have a better choice in her favorite team, but she hasn't missed an Eagles game in decades, right? Like, for those type of people, for those type of women, I am really sure that, man, like Monday, Tuesday, the aftermath of all this is uncomfortable for them. In a sport in a league that they love so much that it doesn't always seem to return that favor. That to me is the biggest thing. And again, we could talk drug policy, we could talk gambling, we could talk all those other hypocrisies, but I just didn't want to get away from that too much.
No, I agree. I wouldn't want to get away from that, because hypocrisy is one thing. There's other things that go about this, but the bottom line is, those other things are like, you know what? Those guys broke the rules. There's other cases there, and sure, the NFL's punishment system is garbage. It always has.
We could talk about Ray Rice and how they suspended him, right? And then the video came out and they resuspended him just because it's always been a crock. It's always been terrible.
It's them trying to guess what's the best reaction that balances
how to quell public outrage.
How to quell public outrage while keeping their best players and favorite players on the field. And Deshaun Watson, there's no doubt.
Bottom line, exactly.
Right. If he plays for the Browns this year, they make more money. It's just that simple. But they also wonder, will we lose money because more people are upset about this and they don't want to talk about this kind of stuff, or they don't want to think about this kind of stuff. One thing that struck me very interesting from the judge, and that's Judge Sue L. Robinson. This came from Tom Pelissero, who reported this. He said that the decision about this that said a 6-game suspension also says that Deshaun Watson must get all his massage therapy from club therapists, meaning the Cleveland Browns. I asked this question on Twitter, and the only answer I've seen people give to this was, well, it's because, they don't want him getting fake accused anymore. And I'm like, I'm sorry, fake accused. If it was 1 or 2, maybe you had a case there, but we're talking about 24 people. My question is this. If he didn't do the things that you're saying that he's been alleged here that you were worried about, that if he actually did, and you're saying that there's not enough evidence, but if he didn't do those things, why is he being forced to not go to outside massage therapists? Because if he's innocent, if he's fine, he's going to go wherever he wants, because then he didn't do the things. And why are you punishing him now? So
Chris, this would be like if I had a drinking problem, right? And they were saying, no, Wes doesn't have a drinking problem, but don't let him go into any bars.
Exactly. Yeah, we're not charging you with your DUI.
No.
Wes don't go to the bar.
No. Wes doesn't have a gambling problem. Just whatever you do, don't let him go to the casino. Like, it's hypocrisy, and I understand why people are so pissed. Now this one might be an exception. Like this one, or not an exception, but this one might be. This is worse than usual. But man, like, don't we have these like bang our head against the wall moments in this regard every year at least once?
Seems like it.
And it's listen, I get why people are really frustrated with this one. I do, because for a long time this felt like the one that was going to be different until it wasn't. And
the NFL finds a way to mess things up. I always say it. It's just
he loses $300,000 of the $45 million that he's going to make this year, whatever. Like, I get it. I understand why this one really has people honked off. It's bad.
It's a rough. And you know what? An NFL exec anonymously said back in like March, I think it was to Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, that was like they were afraid that, like, with the Trevor Bauer decision that came out, and basically he's missing 2 whole seasons, with his situation, and he had far less accusers, that the NFL will look like they don't care about women versus Major League Baseball.
And he's just as important in that context of viewership and everything, I think, as Deshaun Watson. He's arguably the best player for the World Series. At the time, the World Series champion, plays for the Dodgers. One of their best players was a World Series champion. Like, you can make that same kind of argument for, Deshaun Watson, quarterback play, viewership, all that stuff too, and they still 2 years.
That's the bottom line there, man. I think that the NFL has, and again, there could be an appeal. Roger Goodell could come down and say, we're going to extend this because this wasn't done the right way. Again, they can do whatever the heck they want. I think that's the bottom line here. That's
the one thing we've learned over the last decade or so, isn't it? I mean, they're going to do whatever they're going to do, and that train's going to keep on moving.
It's seriously that's what it is. But I do think that the NFL, with this recommendation that's come down, if it's carried out and it's 6 games, there's going to be a lot of heat on them. Last question here before we go. Does this ruling, now, by the way, the Steelers, they play the Browns week 3 and I believe week 17 or week 8. I forgot, how is that? Yeah, they're the 17th game. They're the last game of the season.
Right, week 18. Yeah,
week 18. Yeah, it's I'm still adjusting to
math.
Yeah, those things. But so this means right. So this does mean the Steelers most likely don't play him in that first game in Cleveland Thursday Night Football, but they will play him in the season finale, barring injury or any extension of this suspension. Does this move make the Browns a playoff team right now?
I don't know. Because, see, Chris, maybe, because when you look at the first 6 games of their schedule, it's not that bad. I mean, it's really not.
It's not.
They could easily be 3-3, 4-2, and be in a pretty solid position. They've got a great roster. But even if Deshaun Watson wasn't going to get, let's go down that hypothetical. I mean, I think social media would be burned to the ground by this point. But if Deshaun Watson got no suspension,
oh boy,
I still think I like the Ravens and the Bengals more than I like the Browns.
I hear that.
So does it really change? I don't know. But right now, as you and I here on Tuesday, August 2nd, all right, I'm going to say no, the Browns will not make the playoffs.
Interesting. And just to go over those first few games, their first game goes against Carolina Panthers, Baker Mayfield's new team. Then they get the New York Jets. Then they get
Cleveland. That's a win for Cleveland.
Dang.
Have you seen the videos of Baker in training camp?
No, actually, I haven't.
The Steelers quarter, the dude's throwing picks like he's, my goodness, looking for boogers.
Oh, looking for boogers. Jeez. They got the Jets, then they got the Steelers.
Okay, so 2-1. So 2-1. All right, they'll lose to the Steelers. 2-1.
They lose to the Steelers. Then they get the Falcons in Atlanta.
Maybe the worst team in football next year.
Yeah, but then they got to host the Chargers.
Okay. That's tough. That's
tough. They got to host the Patriots.
Okay,
you never know which
3-3 though.
They can go 3. They can go 3-3, but then it all starts because then it's week 7. The suspension will have been over, and they host the Baltimore Ravens. They go to the Baltimore Ravens, and then they host the Cincinnati Bengals before a bye week.
Those two games are going to do massive numbers.
It's going to be insane. And the Ravens game is a 1:00. I think that someone messed that up. They need to make that a prime time. But then their last game before the bye week is the Bengals in Cleveland, Monday Night Football, Halloween night.
Oh.
Man, I think it's going to be crazy. But Wes, you're saying they don't make the playoffs even with this?
They don't make the playoffs. I'm saying it right now.
I'm with you. I think I even say this. They're going to finish last in the division.
Let's go.
I'm saying I don't.
The football gods are going to smite them.
I think it's even more so. This is going to hover over them for the rest of the year. Everywhere they go, man, y'all shouldn't have Deshaun Watson right now, man. You shouldn't have this. Hey, man, you guys are despicable. I think there's gonna be a lot of fan bases that boo them and give them and not that the boos mean you lose. It just that's not a thing. But I think there's going to be an added hostility.
God forbid something happen. And again, this is football. I'm not being cynical or trying to be a bad guy here. What if Jacoby Brissett gets injured in week 2?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I mean, then
Josh Dobbs.
Then they got Josh Dobbs. Then what's their record going to be? So yeah, I just think, listen, Deshaun Watson long term in Cleveland, they could end up having success there without a doubt. They've got a nice roster, and as long as he looks like he did 2 years ago, he's a nice quarterback in terms of his play on the football field. All right, no, nothing else other than that. But I think for this year, it's gonna be tough for them, and they've got no one to blame but themselves.
Absolutely. We'll see how that plays out. We'll keep you updated with everything from Steelers training camp. We'll be back there tomorrow. Today, I guess, if you're watching this on Tuesday. So enjoy. We hope to give you all that great content then and there. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Wes, thanks for joining the show as always. Let me know I can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yes, sir. At Wesley Euler on Twitter. Motzi and I are live at noon on SNR every single day that the Steelers have practice throughout training camp and in the regular season. You can also get us in podcast form wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Steelers Blitz. Today on the show, Carter, we had Mike Logan.
A legend. A legend Super Bowl champion.
Pittsburgh boy, Mr. WVU, Super Bowl champion. Shout out by Troy Polamalu. And
there you go.
So if you want to hear, we get different alumni interviews every day. Great stuff, all in podcast form. Steelers Blitz, wherever you get your podcasts.
Check out Steelers Blitz. Check out SNR. All the things that Wes and them do, they do a great job there. They had me on last. What was it? Thursday, Friday, one of them days.
Saturday.
Saturday.
All blended I said this to Moats that being at training camp is like a media member, right? It's like when you were in elementary school over the summertime. All you know is that there's no school today.
Right.
It's a day without school, and eventually you'll get to a day with school. When you're covering Steelers training camp, it's either a day that there's practice or a day that there's not practice. It could be Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. You just figure it out.
You just figure it out one day at a time. But that we'll keep figuring it out, and there's going to be a lot of exciting stuff. We'll see how this goes as the week rolls on. Stay here on the Locked On Steelers podcast for all your updates, news, information on the Pittsburgh Steelers. We thank you for joining the show, Wes. We thank you for listening to the show, audience, and watching the show YouTube. I'm Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at SteelersNow.com. We got a lot to talk about as the week goes on. Stay with us. It's going to be an exciting week with the pads. Stay on. We'll see you soon.